All right, so we're on to myth 8 that we're dealing with this summer at the Self-Reg Symposium. So this is one that I think is probably you've written on more than anything else on this list for sure. So it's Self-Reg is just another term for self-control.
Yeah, we have written a lot about this, haven't we?
We
But
have.
I had an interesting email from Barbara King yesterday, just about how deeply entrenched the self-control paradigm is.
Yeah.
And she said to me, it's so deeply entrenched that even when people are talking self-reg, they're really doing self-control. It's a good point. Really, what we're looking at here are, not just two different concepts, but they have very different histories. They rely on very different parts of the brain. This is really two very different phenomena. So how can we sort of crystallize what the difference is? Self-control is about effort. It's about the effort required to, let's say, resist or inhibit an impulse. And self-regulation, or self-reg, is about understanding. And it's understanding the significance of an impulse, it's understanding why these things happen. And what we find is that when you go automatically into that self-control mode, it actually shuts down that understanding, that reflective process. So you and I talk all the time about how self-regulation is both a precursor, it's what makes self-control possible, but really it's also what makes self-control unnecessary. You know, one of my favorite pieces that I ever wrote is that article I wrote with Devin Kazenheiser, Reducing the Effort and Effortful Control. And that's kind of what we hear from everyone who does self-reg.
I like the way you frame that because we do get asked it all the time. And whenever we post anything on self-regulation versus self-control or self-reg versus self-control, we get, it gets retweeted, it gets shared an awful lot. And yet, this was so deeply infused in our thinking, in our way of dealing with things in life. One of the things that jumps out at me is I keep thinking about, that article, because we worked on our journal for the Self-Regulation Institute, which we'll post a link for that along with this blog, and as well as the article you did with Devin. But that article that you did, it was really Jeremy Berman's article, and that you did with Jeremy about the 447 different definitions of self-regulation out there in the peer-reviewed literature. And what's fascinating to me, what I've been thinking about lately, is that when we say self-control, do people really know that we're actually meaning a whole bunch of things that fit into that? And it's
That's
about
good.
the parts, and to me it's about this, it's two things. It's about brain states, or parts of the brain that are working on the certain areas, but it's also about what you actually do to work on it. So what I mean by that is when we know self-regulation is a problem, we want to understand the stress, and we work on the energy and tension.
Yes.
So we don't work on the emotion. We don't even work on necessarily the social skills or anything like those sorts of things. We work on the energy and tension, and like you said, sometimes that's all you need, and then the parts, this brain state or the parts of the brain come back online to work on what needs to be done. But we're really talking about a whole envelope of things.
Yes.
We're talking about social emotional learning. We're talking about self-regulated learning for sure. We're talking, what else are we talking about when we sort of say that umbrella of things under the self-control umbrella?
Self-monitoring.
Yes.
Agency.
Yes. Self-determination.
Self-determination. Grit.
Yeah, absolutely grit. And look, just to be clear, those things are important. We want to see them in our young people and our own children, but we want to help our children and our students have what they need so that they can work on those things themselves. So we're looking at the underlying pieces, which is the self-regulation. That's what we mean when we say that's what makes all of this
that's well
body, this self-control possible.
Yeah, that's very well said.
We'll link a lot of good readings on this for you, and we have I even think we have a couple of good videos that we could link because it's a big one. But it's really a foundational. It goes back to why we see it.
Yes.
Your famous saying, see a child differently, you see a different child.
Yeah.
See a child and you're seeing self-regulation. You're looking at it through the lens of self-regulation. You see a different child, and it's really, that's the mindset shift, right?
It's the difference between seeing a child when that child is dysregulated, as opposed to seeing that child as weak.
Yes. Or disobedient
Or
or needing to
disobedient,
try
oppositional,
harder, or
Yep.
the effortful control.
And that's a huge change.
Absolutely.